iDriveSoCal is brought to you by the very best auto retailers from across Southern California. When it's time for you to buy, or even just kick the tires on the idea of buying, just go to iDriveSoCal.com and click on dealers. iDriveSoCal.com, click on dealers, and get connected. Now, on with the podcast.
We would go to car shows. Generally, everybody else had a sign up saying, "Look, but don't touch. They're a precious jewel." And we thought differently. We thought that we should invite the public, particularly young children, to sit in our cars and go for a ride in them. They're not immobile. They are moving art. And so to enjoy them, you have to use them. We bring out 3 or 4 cars from our collection, and people line up and get a ride. It's no charge, it's all free.
Welcome to iDriveSoCal, the podcast all about mobility from the automotive capital of the United States, Southern California. Today is a pretty fun day for me, actually already has been, because I've been getting a tour through the Automobile Driving Museum here in El Segundo, California, which those of you from Southern California know that El Segundo is adjacent to LAX, Los Angeles International Airport. And sitting with me right now is the founder of the Automobile Driving Museum, Mr. Stanley Zimmerman. Stanley, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure to be here and talk with you.
So the Automobile Driving Museum, you're the founder. It was your vision long ago. Can you kind of start off with a high-level explanation, summary?
Correctly, I am a co-founder of it along with a man called Earl Rubenstein, who's no longer active in the museum. He's busy with his profession as an architect. And we're both car collectors, and we would go to car shows and to car exhibits, concourses, and we would be there with our cars, and generally everybody else had a sign up saying, "Look, but don't touch. They're a precious jewel." And we thought differently. We thought that we should invite the public, particularly young children, to sit in our cars. And so between us, we had discussions and said someday we'd like to have a museum for our cars where the public could come and sit in them, bring their children and let their children sit in them, and go for a ride in them. They're not immobile. They are moving art. And so to enjoy them, you have to use them.
And how long ago did you actually execute on that dream that became a vision, that became a reality?
In the beginning, it was just car clubs coming and maybe bringing their families for meetings. It wasn't the general public. But in 2002, I was able to get the use of a large underground or semi-underground garage under a preschool, which they weren't using. Okay. And so we put our cars there and started with leaving a few cars out on the street, and with the sign on them, there's a museum around the corner in West Los Angeles. Okay. It was. And so we'd get a few people coming in, and then I decided that it would be worthwhile making it a public museum, so that there's some tax benefits, but it also meant that the collection could go on. It wouldn't be limited by our lifetimes. And then and we did that for 3-4 years before we had the opportunity to acquire this building in El Segundo. We chose El Segundo because it was near LAX and because it was in the South Bay, where there were no car museums and a lot of people that like cars.
Sure.
And the specific location because it was in an industrial neighborhood where on Saturday and Sunday nobody was around, so we could take people for rides in the cars with less risk.
And that's the coolest thing. I mean, it didn't dawn on me until I was walking up that your sign outside literally says, hey, rides on, what is it, Sundays?
Sundays, 10 to 4 every Sunday. The last ride starts a little earlier, so it's finished by 4. We bring out 3 or 4 cars from our collection, and people line up and get a ride. It's no charge, it's all free.
And that's the coolest thing. And automotive museums, I've been to countless of them in many different states throughout the different countries as well. But your name is very literal, and I think so many people are used to the concept of museum being look, don't touch. But the fact that you have driving, literally automobile driving museum. No, in fact, you get to go for a ride. That is
Somebody drives you around.
Yeah.
A docent who's specially trained. And the day before, the cars are reviewed by a mechanic to make sure that everything's okay with them, so they're safe. And as long as we have some restrictions on kids that are very small,
Baby seats.
because there's no seat belts in
Yep.
some of these cars. And the ride's a 10, 15-minute ride, and there are 3, 4 cars out there, and you can get a ride in each one of them, as long as you get in line and take your turn.
That's so much fun. And because you have cars out here from literally the early 1900s all the way up through, there's definitely some 80s, probably 90s and beyond. I've only been in one of your main rooms here. I haven't gotten the full tour yet. But what vehicles are people getting rides in? It's different every weekend, I'm assuming?
Pretty much every weekend. There are some cars that if we were to drive them, we have an 1886 Benz. It was built by Mercedes in 1986. They made 11 of them, duplicates to the first one, that they gave to dealers. And Beverly Hills Mercedes gave us this. And we did have it once run. It does run, but like cars of that vintage, when you run them, you can pretty much rebuild them for the next ride. Okay, so that's our oldest car. And our newest car is a 2000 Celine Mustang. And we have pretty much everything in between. Generally, the cars that go out are the cars that are on display, whatever happens to be on display, or ready for the display. We have 130 cars. And about half of them are on display at any time. The others are either in the repair shop or in our garage storage facility.
And now Alec, I guess his title is curator?
Car manager.
Okay. So Alec was showing me around, and he clarified that all of the cars in the museum run, but not necessarily all of them are driven, because some are actually quite valuable and rare.
That is correct. But most of the ones that are very valuable, we have a duplicate that's not so valuable.
Ah, okay.
So, yes, you may not get a ride in a $1 million car. You get to look at it. You get to sit in it under supervision. But we might have a car that's not worth $1 million, okay, that you can get a ride in.
And that brings me to the question that's, I think, on everybody's mind as soon as you walk into a museum and there's beautiful vehicles all over. What is the most high value vehicle that you have?
It probably is the 1955 Packard Caribbean convertible that was number 7, was the first one sold to the public and was sold to Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes gave it to his then wife, an actress, Jean Peters, who, if you like movies of the 50s, you'll see her in a lot of them. They took it for her. It was her birthday present, and they drove it to Malibu and drove it home and parked it in a garage in Beverly Hills and went off to Las Vegas. And the car sat there until her divorce. I bought it from Jean Peters and donated it to the museum. It's probably the most original one. It only has 1,700 miles on it now. We only drive it about a mile a year. And because of its history and because it's being so rare, it probably is our most valuable car. But it isn't much more than the next one, which is a 1930 Stutz Wyman Monte Carlo. Wyman bodies are made like old airplanes, like for World War I airplanes. They're not metal, they're not wood. They are a hardwood frame on which cloth is stretched. So it's a cloth body. Okay.
Cloth body.
Cloth body, yes. It's more like a vinyl, but they didn't have vinyl in those days. And so there's in the whole world of Stutzes, there are 23 Wyman-bodied Stutzes left, because you can tell if it's a fabric body car and you leave it out in the snow, things are going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And only 4 1930 Monte Carlos. So it's a very rare car.
The Stutz is valued at how much again?
Something over $500,000.
Now, the Howard Hughes' wife vehicle, Jean Peters.
Yes.
What is the value of that vehicle?
It's really, and you really can't tell. I've been told that if by some of the auction companies that would like us to sell it, which we won't, that in an auction it would probably bring more than $1 million.
So you had a vision for this museum a long time ago. Has it come to fruition? Has it changed a little bit?
Oh, it's always changing. Things aren't static. They're not static. If they're static, you're a dinosaur. We have dinosaurs today. They're flying around as birds. They evolved. The museum has to evolve. We do a lot of things for young people, youth. We have an event 9 times a year, if it doesn't rain, where we for kids that are in the average maybe 5, 6 years of age, get a chance to learn a little bit about cars, answer a few questions, and win a prize. Mm-hmm. The prize is Hot Wheels, which graciously Mattel provides for us. And they, by the way, they get to see at that same time Mattel's full-size cars, that they have full-size cars. So maybe 500 young people show up for that. And then we do a lot of birthday parties for preteens here.
Okay.
And that all has there's a motive behind that. We're trying to implant into them a memory that maybe when they're 50, around that age, that they'll start to think about, gee, I saw all those cars, and you want to the cars are here forever. We're just temporary custodians of them. So we have to think about who's the next custodian, mm-hmm. and maybe they'll want to have for their memory a Toyota that has a computer in it,
Right.
So and not a car that you had to crank to start, didn't have any electricity in it. All right. So the museum will evolve that way. There's a need for having a facility where people can learn how to take care of these cars. So we'll grow to that. I mean, we have some youth here that come in that help us, but it'll get more formalized. And if you ask me what else is going to happen, I don't know. But whatever is going to be for the time as we change, we will change.
It sounds like whatever's going to happen, your intention is for it to stay and to continue growing.
That's our plan. The museum has funding for the next 40 years. And if they are careful with what their funding is, it'll go longer. But of course, we need to have sponsors, contributors, docents that help us out. We're working hard now on bringing females into the car hobbies and teaching them. There's classes here for women to learn how to maintain cars. We're starting a project where the women will do a restoration of a GMC truck. They're going to do that. Will guide them, but they're going to do all the work on it.
And the driving portion of your museum, it happens every Sunday. Are there any Sundays that you guys take off? Holidays, whatnot?
Yes,
The obvious ones.
yeah, obvious Sundays. Although some of the Sundays, yes, they're driving because the public gets off and they want to be here. A rainy day
Sure.
is not a day for taking these cars out for a drive.
Luckily, in Southern California, there's not a whole heck of a lot of those. Mr. Stanley Zimmerman, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. The way that anybody can get involved, I believe your website is theadm.org, right?
THEADM.org. Or if you go Automobile Driving Museum, you'll get us too.
Automobile Driving.
You can apply on the website, and definitely you can become one of our members or sponsors.
It's a fun place to come, and thank you for executing on your vision to make it a reality.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Automobile Driving Museum.
The Automobile Driving Museum in El Segundo, California. You can find it online at theadm.org, or just swing on by any day of the week.
Not Mondays.
Not Mondays, but swing on by any day of the week but Mondays. And if you want to go for a ride on Sundays,
10 to 4.
10 to 4.
But I would get here earlier and get in line.
There you go. El Segundo, California. For iDriveSoCal, I'm Tom Smith. As always, thanks for listening.
This episode was engineered and edited by Micah Palmquist.